Well, greetings, Alyse. It's great to have you on for another episode of our WCN-Fluencer podcast. Great to see you today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you.
I'm the one that's so fortunate because I get to talk to awesome people like yourself. And then you find out it's like, oh no, we just kind of met a month or so ago and we have all these wonderful conversations. And haven't we known each other for like forever?
I know. It's always fun when you meet someone and it's almost like you've met them in another life or something. And that was definitely the case with us. So it's always fun to chat with you again.
I just always enjoy acquiring younger sisters. So it's a good thing.
I love it.
Well, because having a sister is like having a best friend for life. And I have 4, and now I've acquired another one. So very good.
Oh, I didn't realize you had 4 sisters. See, I've already learned something new about you.
See, that's when we share. See, when we share our stories, we get to learn more about everybody.
Exactly.
And we're going to share, and we're going to learn a lot about your story today. And so, tell our listeners. I know we're going to talk about the wonderful program you've developed in CareCopilot, but tell our listeners a little bit about your caregiving story and what led you into creating CareCopilot.
Sure. So my sister and I took care of our aging parents for a total of 8 years, one right after the other. Our dad had multiple sclerosis, so we took care of him in the last 2 years of his life. And then shortly before he died, our mom got diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So we took care of her in the last 6 years of her life. And it was brutal, even though we were fortunate enough to have paid help and a lot of help from extended family because both of our parents came from pretty big families. Despite all of that, it was still so exhausting emotionally, financially, and in just about every other way you can imagine, as I know you know firsthand. And I am a software engineer by trade. I was a senior software engineer at Venmo. And so, I really felt like after my parents passed away, I couldn't live with knowing that I had lived through this with my sister and extended family for 8 years. And I have this skill set that I have to create apps. And I didn't even try to make anything that could make this experience easier for other people. So I left my job at Venmo and built CareCopilot, which does just that.
So you're taking your talents and skills and you've seen an area that needs some help and you're going for it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I didn't really envision myself as an entrepreneur, starting my own tech startup. That wasn't something that I really aspired to. I know a lot of great tech founders who do, but for me, it was more a matter of necessity. And I felt really called to use my skill set to, like I said, build, something that I wish that I had when I was going through this.
One of the great things about being a part of the caregiving community is people that come into it. We all come into it by hook or crook. Nobody plans to be a caregiver. But we all come with different skill sets. And we all, in some ways, want to give back. And you're just kind of a perfect example of that because you see the need and you've got this wonderful, I can barely plug, as a lot of my guests know, I can barely plug my electronics in, but you understand from a different perspective, from being on both sides of the technology of how this could really improve a caregiver's life.
Yeah, that's interesting what you said about how, me and a few others who have gone through this are using our skill set to now improve the experience for other people. Because I'll be honest, Christopher, after both of my parents passed away, I wasn't immediately like, okay, I have the time and space to build something and I'm going to go off and do it. It was a really tough decision. I spent months asking myself the tough question of, okay, I just went through this for 8 years of my life. Do I really want to go through the next 5, 10 years, however long it takes to turn CareCopilot into the success that I know that it can be? is that really how I want to spend the next few years? Do I want to relive those caregiving years over and over again every day as I'm speaking with users, as I'm speaking with investors, as I'm speaking with all of these other people in this space? And ultimately, the answer for me was yes. But I continue to be surprised, pleasantly surprised, by how many other people who have gone through this and come out on the other side are also using their talents and their skill set to make this easier for other people. I'm truly touched every day meeting people who have lived through it and who are still in a way living through it every day through their radio show or their podcast or their blog or whatever the case might be.
And it kind of just proves the point of one of my pet sayings. It's through diversity where we all, I just want to get emotional. I'm sorry. It just, with our diverse talents and skills, we all find this common theme and thread to help each other out. I've been blessed to be in this space for 10, 11 years now. I kind of think about that and to see the progress that's come, especially on the technology side. It's just really gratifying. It's, caregiving is never going to be easy per se because it's so emotional. But with folks like yourself coming on board to really help out, there's just, I see light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I do too. And I mean, every day I'm hearing about other companies, other tech startups that are making the experience just a little bit easier. Different services, both online and offline, that can help you manage your documents, or that can help you, connect with someone who can be your concierge through that whole process. Or in my case, that can help you connect with other people who are doing it and help connect you to financial resources. So yeah, I think that the caregivers of tomorrow will have a much easier time than we did back when we were doing it. And that's progress for sure.
And the other area that we align so well on is the pillars of care. And one of your most important pillars is the financial aspect, as it is with the whole care network. Because it's not cheap to be a caregiver, because you end up supplementing and taking time off of work. It's all encumbered.
You're right. It can be really financially devastating for some people. The average friend and family caregiver is spending about $7,200 a year bankrolling their loved one's care. And that's more than they spend on food for themselves. Most families only spend about $6,000 a year on food. And I think the problem is particularly palpable for middle-class families like mine, because I'm happy to say that for the most financially disadvantaged Americans, Medicaid actually does do a decent job of stepping in to help pick up the tab. And I'm really
very good point. Mm-hmm.
And for the top 1%, you have the money there. So that's not really a problem. But yes, for the rest of us, the other, 95% of us,
the bulk the bulk of society.
Yes, exactly. It's like, well, what do you do when you're just a normal person working a normal job and you're trying to make ends meet and pay for your father's care, your grandfather's care, your spouse's care, whatever the case might be. And there's just not a lot out there, which is why I've stepped in to help bridge that gap. And I'm excited about making sure that other people have an easier time than I did at this financially. When my father passed away, I will never forget that I had to drain my own savings to pay for his funeral. It was about $15,000, and that was only my share, not including my sister's money that she put in, my aunt's money. It was all just so expensive, and it would have broken my dad's heart to know that all of my savings, I was like 28 at the time, went to pay for his funeral. And, it shouldn't have to be like that for families.
Boy, that's another thing we are aligned on. It's just because we don't often think about what these costs are going to be when we're in the middle of it. Very, very few people plan in advance for this. And when you think about it, I think the latest number I read, 65% people in America don't have advanced directives. They don't have these very important plans in place that make a difficult day just a tad bit easier if we have those things in place. But by sharing this information and sharing our stories, people are able to take better care of themselves and have those honest conversations with their care partner.
Yeah, and those conversations are tough. I'm working on a blog post right now that'll be published in a few weeks with some guidance and some tips on how to have those tough conversations, because you're absolutely right. Very few of us have these conversations with our loved ones in advance. I definitely didn't have them with either one of my parents in advance. And this does get so much easier if you do just a little bit of planning in advance. And, you don't necessarily have to sit someone down and have one really long and somber conversation with them about everything that they want. You can also have, shorter conversations with them, just, while you're at the grocery store or getting the car washed or whatever it is. And then that snowballs so that you actually have the information that you need to move forward when it's time.
Those little tidbits of hints at the appropriate time, because you don't want to make these conversations stressful, but they are conversations that need to be had as we move along and caring for somebody else.
Yeah, and it's tough. I have spoken with truly hundreds of caregivers at this point, and one thing that I've noticed is that there's always two sides to that conversation. And it's so rare that both sides are equally, committed to engaging in that conversation and having that conversation. So, for example, if it's two spouses trying to talk about someone's care, maybe one spouse is really motivated to talk it out and get the attorney early and start saving financially early, but the other spouse just isn't there yet emotionally in their heart, and they just can't have that conversation. So it's really tough to get both sides on board. But yeah, I'll let you know when I publish that blog post, because I scoured the interwebs for some.
I want to be the first one to read it. So there you go.
Thank you. Yes, I got great tips from a lot of folks for that.
And one of the is I think back to my caregiving experience, and I was very grateful that with my partner, Richard, he and I were able to have those important conversations. I mean, I knew exactly what he wanted, especially at end of life. And that's why, in sharing the stories and experiences, it's cathartic in one way, but we also know that when we share our stories, it can help somebody. It can touch that person who is maybe fearful of having that open conversation. Because I know personally for me, when that day came, knowing that I was able to follow everything that he wanted took some of the burden off of me and made a difficult day just a tad bit easier. And that's why I just so honored to talk to people like yourself, where we can share these stories, because people pay attention to stories.
Yeah. That really touched me, what you mentioned about you and Richard being able to have those honest conversations, because I tried to have those conversations with both of my parents and they didn't go well. And it was particularly hard with my mom, who had Alzheimer's, because she lost her speech and she lost her ability to communicate. And so she denied until truly the moment she lost her voice and lost the ability to speak. She denied that there was anything wrong with her memory. And then her speech was gone, and that was it. And because she was in such a state of denial until the very end, my sister and I, her name is Lisa, we never were able to engage with her in communication about what she would want at end of life and what her preferences were. So we just sort of, to the best of our ability, gave us what we thought she would want. But that made for very, heartbreaking and anxiety-inducing decisions, because we had no way to communicate with her and know what she wanted for sure. And, we did the best that we could, but not to beat a dead horse, but to your point, if you can have those conversations, it makes all the difference for both sides.
It sounds like your mother has two wonderful daughters.
We did the best that we could.
I think that's something that we kind of all strive for, but we all often wonder, did we do the right thing? Could we have done something better? But in the end, it's the authentic effort that we put into it that really makes us feel good about a very difficult situation.
Yeah. And to be honest, I lost my dad in 2014 and then my mom in 2020. So somewhat more recently. And, I'm still going through that process where I'm asking myself, did I do everything that I could? Did I do everything right? And this is such a tough journey because unlike other jobs, because caregiving is absolutely a job. So I say other jobs. Mm-hmm. Unlike other jobs where you have some sort of manager or supervisor to tell you you're doing things well, you're doing things poorly, you need to do more of this, less of that. There's no validation in your job as a caregiver. And then your loved one passes away and that's just it. And you're not left knowing if you did everything, quote unquote, right.
Exactly.
Or not. And at the end of the day, there is no right and no wrong. But it's taken me a long time to come to terms with that. And if I'm being really honest, there's a small part of me that just regrets that I spent the last few years of my parents' life frantically trying to provide them with the best care possible and get them into the best neurologist and get them into this clinical trial. My sister and I, we spent so much time doing that. We didn't spend as much time as I would have liked just enjoying the last few years of their life. And that's really why I built CareCopilot, because no one should have to spend those last few years that way, have their loved one pass away, and then just wonder like that. You don't get that time back. And, I want people to get that time back. I want people to get that money back. And that's really why I'm doing what I'm doing.
You're going to make me cry.
I know. I'm crying a little bit too.
But it's just so important. It's just so important to have something like this available because we all caregivers are co-pilots. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll also say that I think it's really important that things like CareCopilot are free for families. I know that this is something that we talked about earlier.
Isn't that the best four-letter word anywhere?
It is. Because, I'm a big believer that certain types of information and support need to be free. If you want to know the latest on what Kim Kardashian is doing, then I think that it makes sense to pay for that content. But when you need to know what are the top things you need to be focusing on when you're taking care of someone, when you need a resource to show you, what your different options are for booking in-home care, things like that need to be free to the community.
Free. Right.
And so CareCopilot makes its money when you do book that in-home care. We take a percentage from the service provider, but we're free for families. And so I want to stress that I think that resources are needed for caregivers, but I also think that free resources are needed for caregivers.
We are so aligned. It's kind of like we were separated at birth. So
we're very much kindred spirits. I'm so glad that we met.
Yeah, because I and I know all my listeners have heard me say this, and I learned this actually from Denise Brown many years ago. Caregivers need three things: they need validation, resources, and respite. Yeah, and resources. And I come from a social work ministerial background. Mm-hmm. Resources are critical for everybody. And the best resource, and I know I don't want to project here, but I know you're going to agree with this. The best resources come from one caregiver to another, because Absolutely. we're not going to put our I don't want to say reputation, but we're not going to tell another caregiver to go somewhere when we know it didn't work for us, because we know what kind of stress that put us under. So that's why I'm just such a big proponent of sharing as much information as possible, because we know we've gone through the vetting process.
Absolutely. If you sign up for CareCopilot today, you'll see that one of the first features that we released is a free in-app community where caregivers can share resources with each other. And I'm impressed every day by how vulnerable and how open people are and how specific people are. There are caregivers there who have said, okay, if you need an elder care attorney in New Jersey, this person worked for me. If you are looking for a free support group in Chicago, here's one that's offered by this medical center. I mean, people are really fantastic, and I'm impressed and inspired every day by how, I don't even know how generous people are with their sharing, because there is so much information out there and everybody knows a little something that's worked for them or something that's been valuable. And when we all get together, that's where the gold really is.
Because when it gets right down to it, there are no strangers when it comes to caregiving.
Yeah.
We may not, we understand where we've been, we understand where you're going, and through, it's through those sharing those stories where we get the best information and referral. So, but I'm going to embarrass you just a second here. Is that okay?
Sure.
I'm going to embarrass you just a second.
But I'm ready.
It'll be okay. It'll be okay, because, congratulations on the Amazon Web Service Award. I'd like you to talk a little bit about that. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. That was an amazing honor. So Amazon is very well known, as you know. And, when a lot of people think of Amazon, they think about going shopping on Amazon and buying their laundry detergent on there, which is great. I do that too.
Or my camera that I'm looking at you in right now. So.
Yeah. So the thing about Amazon is that they also have a really large department for web services. So just like you can go on Amazon and buy your laundry detergent, you can also go on Amazon and buy a server or a database. And that specific department is called Amazon Web Services. And Amazon invests in startups like mine and provides them with, it's actually not an investment, it's a grant. So it's a no strings attached grant that it gives to up and coming tech startups like mine to help, them get off the ground and do what we need the capital to do. And so they invested $125,000 in CareCopilot earlier this year, which is a huge help. And it's grants like that allow me to be providing all of these resources to caregivers for free. So definitely very grateful to them. In addition to the money, they provided a lot of great mentorship and other resources. And yeah, they've been really fantastic, I have to say.
Well, I think they have somebody that they're working with is pretty fantastic too.
Thank you.
So, Alyse, I can talk to you like forever, and I'm sure we're going to have more conversations, but let our listeners know how they can sign up for CareCopilot and how they could be in touch with you with any other questions. And I have a feeling we're going to be doing a few more of these down the road. So
definitely. Well, if you want to sign up for CareCopilot, you just go to carecopilot.co. Again, it's free for everyone. The sign-up process takes 5 seconds. I made sure of that because I know how annoying it is when you want to sign up for something and they're asking you a million questions. Nobody has time for that. And yeah, right now you can take advantage of CareCopilot's content and community. And when you sign up now, you'll be the first to know as we start releasing some of those financial features, which we'll be doing slowly throughout the winter to put more money in your pocket for all of that expensive care. So yeah, definitely sign up. And if you have any questions, ideas, I'm very accessible on Twitter, LinkedIn. You can email me at Alyse@carecopilot.co. I always love just getting on the phone and speaking with people who are still going through this. I do it every day. So even if there's someone out there who just wants to chat with someone who's on the other side of this, I'm happy to do that too.
We're all there for one another. And,
Exactly.
Alyse, with the great work that you're doing, you are certainly a WCN-Fluencer. And I'm just so thrilled that that we're connecting and sharing resources together. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me, Christopher.